Yo, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel, and today we're going to look at some future box decks over in Japan. Now, Japan, of course, does have our rotation right now, and they are playing with all the brand new Temporal Forces cards we'll be getting in March, and one of the main archetypes is the brand new future box. This deck is going to be comprised mostly of just future Pokemon, because there's, of course, a ton of new future cards coming out in our next set, and the future box deck is very similar to the old Team Plasma archetypes from way back in 2013. So this deck is very nostalgic for some players, and I think a lot of people are really excited to see if the future box deck can be any good. Of course, you have powerful cards like the new Iron Crown, you have the new Baby Miraidon and Miraidon EX, and you have old cards like Iron Hands EX and Iron Valiant to make up this archetype. And this deck does look kind of cool. There's a lot of really cool things going for it. It's, of course, got a really good A-Spec card, and I want to look at some early lists in Japan and kind of see what Japan is playing for their future box decks. I'm not going to lie, though, I do think that Ancient is doing a lot better than Future right now over in Japan, but I'm still interested to see how Future Box is doing and what lists people are coming up with over in Japan. Of course, y'all are new here to the second channel. Make sure to subscribe down below. We're on the road to 11,000 subs here on the second channel, and leave a like if you don't go on to enjoy, and I will leave a link down below to Pokebook if you want to go check out any of these deck lists for yourself. The site that I use to get all the lists I'll leave down below. Now, before we get into the list, I actually do want to look at some of the cards in the Future Box deck so you know what some of them do, to give you a bit of insight before we look at the deck list. Because some of the cards you're looking at the list, you'll be like, well, I don't know what that does. Kind of, so just a bit easier to explain things. So, starters, one of the main cards in the deck is going to, of course, be the brand new Iron Crown EX. Now, this is the main kind of bench sitter in the deck. It's got that ability where your future Pokemon's attacks will do 20 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. Now, this ability does, of course, stack, so you can have multiple Iron Crown EX in play, allowing you to boost your future Pokemon's attacks by quite a bit. I mean, if you have like 2 in play, you're doing plus 40 more damage, which ain't too shabby. You can even play this with the Future Booster Capsule card, the tool card that lets your future Pokemon already do 20 more damage. So there's quite a few ways your future Pokemon can hit really, really hard, and Iron Crown is one of the main components of the future deck. Allowing all your future Pokemon to do more damage like that is pretty insane, and the ability, of course, does stack. There's also the brand new single prize Miraidon. This card is insane. It's got the attack Accel Peak, which for 1 energy does 40 damage, and then search your deck for up to 2 basic energies and attach them to your future Pokemon in any way that you like. That's pretty insane. Energy acceleration for future Pokemon in the form of an attack ain't too bad at all because you're actually doing 40 damage, and if you combine that with Iron Crown and Future Booster Capsule, you're doing like 80 damage for 1 energy. You're knocking out a lot of little HP Pokemon. Stuff like Charmander, Comfey, stuff like that all get KO'd by this attack, and you're putting energy into play for your future Pokemon. This card is really, really good for the future deck. It's one of the best cards in the deck because it's a 1-prizer, and it puts energy into play and can put on a little bit of pressure in the early game. Now, that's not the only energy acceleration card they got. Of course, they got the brand new A-Spec card, Reboot Bot. Now, future decks, I think, just kind of always will play Reboot Bot. This card is really good. Attach a base energy card from your discard pile to each of your future Pokemon. That's insane. If your entire board is just 6 future Pokemon, you can put 6 energy into play, which is insane. Now, you can, of course, combine this with something like Energy Switch to move the energies around. So if you're trying to build up a specific Pokemon, you can put one on with the Reboot Bot, then you can energy switch another one off of another future Pokemon to that Pokemon. So there are some cool combos you can do with this. This card can even see play with cards like Silene. So you can do this multiple times in a game because this is just insane energy acceleration. I mean, 6 energy in play for free is just ridiculous. But some other attackers in the deck, we do have this new Miraidon EX. It is coming in the starter deck, but I'm pretty sure we're going to be getting this in Temporal Forces anyways. It's got 2 big attacks here. It's got Reject Bolt, which does 60 damage. Your opponent's active Pokemon already has damage on it. You can do 100 more damage. And then you got Cyber Drive, which does 220 damage, and that's pretty clean damage. I mean, 220 damage isn't bad damage to do, considering you can buff that damage with Iron Crown and Future Booster Capsule, and sometimes you're just going to be hitting plus 60 damage, and you're knocking out those big V-Star Pokemon like Arceus and Giratina, which are pretty popular in the rotation format. And then finally, there's Iron Leaves. Now, Charizard EX is probably actually, it is not even probably, it just flat out is the best deck right now in Japan in the rotation. But Iron Leaves is a great card to have within the deck because it's a grass Pokemon that does big damage. It does 180 damage, and it's got that ability when you play it from your hand onto your bench. You can switch your active Pokemon with this Pokemon. If you do, you can move any amount of energy from your other Pokemon to this Pokemon. So if you combine this with Reboot Bot, like you Reboot Bot, 3 grass energy into play, and then you bench the Iron Leaves, you can just go straight into Iron Leaves and start swinging and knocking out Charizard EX. That's one of the main things that this deck has going for it, is it does have a really good grass Pokemon that's pretty easy to put into play, and it does help a lot against Charizard, which again is like the best deck right now over in Japan. But those are some of the main key cards within the future deck. Now, I do have some other cards pulled up we're going to look at as we look at some of the lists, but let's get into the deck list. So let's take a look here. So we got the first deck list here to look at. This one is focused solely on the Miraidon and the Iron Valiant. Again, we know that the Miraidon can do a nice clean 220 damage. Now, within this list too, it is playing Iron Valiant and the Miraidon, so having the 2 different energy types, playing the Lightning and the Psychic. I think the main thing you'll notice, this deck doesn't play Iron Hands EX in it. I mean, you are playing the Lightning and the Psychic. I wouldn't mind maybe seeing an Iron Hands get put in this list too, but it is still kind of cool. You do have a bit of extra damage with Iron Valiant too. Keep in mind, while you can boost the damage with Booster Capsule and Iron Crown, with this deck does play 3 crowns, 3 capsules, technically you can use Tachyon Bits to put damage into play too. So there are some really sneaky plays you can make with Tachyon Bits. And just having like the big beat sticks here with the Miraidon, and obviously having the Iron Valiant as an attacker. Iron Valiant does 200 damage, I'm pretty sure, which again isn't bad base damage to do. You can increase that damage quite a bit with the damage mods, and you have Tachyon Bits, I guess, is another way to get more damage on the board. The deck does play the Reboot Bot. Like I said, it is the best energy acceleration card, and then there's also the TM Devolution in the deck here, which could help a lot against Charizard. This build here is not playing any Iron Leaves or Grass Energy. Speaking of Iron Leaves, though, this next build is indeed playing the Iron Leaves within the deck here. Now, this build is, of course, playing the Iron Hands, the Iron Crown, and the Baby Miraidon and the Iron Leaves. Now, it's not playing the Miraidon EX in the deck. It's playing a couple of Mew EXs. I guess one thing to note about the future decks, they don't really have like a core draw engine. Well, they have some pretty good attackers and some pretty good energy acceleration methods. They don't really have like a draw engine per se. There's no future Pokemon that like draws cards. There is the ability to maybe play Mew. I guess one other thing to note about the future deck real quick is they have access to Techno Radar. So Techno Radar allows you to discard a card from your hand and get 2 future Pokemon. That is insane. It's literally like a Battle VIP pass for future decks. And I mean, Battle VIP is rotating, and a lot of decks are going to have to rely on Buddy Poffin to set up, whereas Future can just play Techno Radar to get any future Pokemon. So they basically get to keep Battle VIP, essentially, which is kind of insane. Even discarding a card from your hand is beneficial because you can discard energy cards for the Reboot Bot. That's just crazy. I mean, yeah, like Techno Radar is going to make future decks insane. This build here is just very straightforward. Your main attackers are going to be the Iron Hands and the Iron Leaves EX. Iron Leaves does 180. You can increase that damage with the Iron Crown. And you also have the Iron Hands, which is just a very deadly attacker. One of the strongest cards in the game right now before a rotation is Iron Hands EX. So having access to Iron Hands EX as a bit more of a beat stick attacker, thanks to the extra damage it can do, is pretty good. I mean, one thing I like about Iron Hands in the future deck is there's actually quite a few big Pokemon that are in the format that are actually weak to Lightning right now in the post-rotation format. Some of the big ones are Lugia V-Star, which is actually surprisingly a good deck in our rotation thanks to the brand new Cinccino. There's also Pidgeot EX, which obviously is just good with Charizard, which is the best deck. And there's also Palkia V-Star, which sees a lot of play with Goldengo, which is another pretty good deck in Japan right now. So Iron Hands can actually be very beneficial because it hits 3 major Pokemon for weakness. And even Lugia lost Dunsparce. That's a huge loss for that. So that's one of the big benefits of playing the Iron Hands within the Future Box deck, is you can make it do some big damage really quickly, and you can one-shot a lot of really big threats in the game right now that are popular. Looking at this next build, now this one has a lot more one-prizers in it, and this is what I kind of like. It does have a lot more one-prizers. It did also get top 8 in a tournament. Looking at it here, of course, we do have the Miraidons, we got the Iron Leaves, we got the Iron Crown, we got a Pidgeot V with a 4 Seal Stone package. Now, this build does lean more into the one-prizers. Now, we'll take a look at what the one-prizers do, of course. So, we do have this brand new Iron Valiant here. There's a couple Iron Valiants, actually, we are getting, but we got this Iron Valiant here, which does have a Gemini Laser, which does 20 damage for 1 energy, and then 20 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. And then you have Zenblade, which does 120 damage And again, with extra damage mods, it's not a bad one-prize beat stick Pokemon that can do a decent bit of damage. In fact, this is one of the most similar cards to the Team Plasma deck because it's very similar to the Kyurem that was very, very good in the Team Plasma deck. So that's kind of funny that we kind of have like similar cards: Miraidon, Thundurus, Iron Crown, Deoxys EX, Iron Valiant, the Kyurem. There's another Iron Valiant, though, that also is pretty good. It's got the attack Majesty Sword, which does 100 damage, and if you played a future supporter card from your hand this turn, you could do 100 more damage. So that's another really big beat stick attacker you can play within the deck. Now, there is also this Iron Treads here that you saw in the deck list. It does have that ability Dual Core. If this Pokemon has a future booster energy capsule on it, it is both a fighting and a metal Pokemon, and it does 60 damage, and you move an energy from this Pokemon to one of your bench Pokemon. Now, this card is actually not bad to have because it becomes two good types. It becomes both a fighting and a metal type. Now, that's really good against Shenpao, which is a very popular deck right now in the rotation format, and also against Iron Hands EX, right? So that's pretty good. Now, it only does 60 damage, but once again, you can increase the damage with Iron Crown and with Future Booster Capsule. With a couple of those in play, you're hitting it pretty hard. And then finally, there's this one prize Iron Hands here. Yeah, there's a one prize Iron Hands that goes with the Iron Hands EX. Now, it does have the attack Volt Wave that can do 30 damage. Flip a coin of heads, your opponent's active is paralyzed. And then you have the other attack, Super Alloy Hand, which does 80 damage. And if your opponent's active is in EX or V, it does 80 more damage. So it's a nice little one-prize attacker that can deal with some of those lightning weak threats that I talked about. And once again, this list here does play some of those main attackers in the deck. Like, of course, it does have the Iron Valiant that is 130, and it's got the Iron Treads, it's got the Iron Hands, basically just trying to hit for weaknesses and attack with as many one-prizers as you can. But you do have that big beat stick attacker option with the big Miraidon EX that can do 220 base damage. So you can hit those really high numbers if you want to attack with the Miraidon, but if you want to lean into the single prizers, you do have the Iron Valiant, the Iron Hands, and the Iron Treads in the deck. One thing I do like about this list is raiding Greninja. It's another way to draw cards, and you don't mind discarding energy in the deck because you can combine that nicely with Reboot Ball, which this deck actually doesn't play, I just realized, so never mind. It actually plays Prime Catcher. But yeah, having the draw with Greninja is nice. The Pidgeot's a good option too because you can put it back in the deck and just use it, Force Heal Stone combo, so that's a pretty cool idea to play within the future deck. If you're going to play if you want to play a way to use a Force Seal Stone, Pidgeot might be the way to go. We got another deck list here. Playing some single prizers. It does play the Iron Treads. It is playing Iron Bundle, which doesn't have any water energy in the deck, obviously. Maybe Iron Bundle could be good. I mean, hey, it is a future Pokemon. You can do more damage with it if you really wanted to. But yeah, this build here, playing the big attackers like Iron Hands, got the Iron Leaves in the deck. It is playing the Iron Treads. It's kind of just leaning more into the Iron Leaves, it looks like, as it plays two Iron Leaves and does have that one of Iron Hands. But it does have the Iron Treads, like I said. It is playing a Minior in the deck alongside the Town Store, which is interesting. So the Minior does help a little bit against the Iron Hands decks, which is nice. The deck also plays Judge. I guess Judge plus like Miraidon pressure could be pretty annoying for decks to deal with, which is nice. It does play the Radiant Greninja, and it does play the Reboot Bot, which again, I think is a really good combo. Greninja plus Reboot Bot does seem pretty good because you can discard energy, and then you can also, accelerate the energy into play with Reboot Bot. So that's not a bad idea there. All right, this next Future Box deck here we got to look at. Does kind of play the same things. It's got a lot of Iron Bundles, so it's playing 4 Iron Bundle, which Iron Bundle does, obviously, if you don't know what it does, has that ability where you can discard it on the bench, and then you force your opponent to switch in the active spot. It's actually really good with Iron Hands EX, because you can force your opponent to, you can force them to switch. But actually, the reason why there's 4 Iron Bundle in the deck is because it's playing the Iron Thorns. Now, we can take a look at Iron Thorns here real quick. Now, this card actually is pretty interesting. It's got the attack Destructo Press, which for 2 energy does 70 damage. You can reveal the top 5 cards of your deck. This attack does 70 damage for each future card you find there. You can discard those future cards and shuffle the other cards back in your deck. Now, thankfully, you're not discarding every single card. It's only the future cards you're discarding, and you can actually do quite a bit of damage with this attack. I mean, if you mill 4 future cards, you're doing 280 damage. And keep in mind, you can increase that damage with the Iron Crowns in the Future Booster Capsule if you really want to. So this deck is more of an Iron Thorns deck here. It does still have, obviously, the attack options with the Iron Hands EX, the Baby Miraidon in the deck. It still has the Iron Valiant single prizer that does 130, and it has the Iron Valiant EX in the deck too, but it is trying to lean heavily into the ability to use the Iron Thorns. You can even see it's playing some Turos, it's playing the brand new Mallow supporter that lets you put 2 cards on top of your deck. which is cool. So definitely a bit of an interesting way to play it. I don't hate the idea of Iron Thorns. I mean, as long as you're not milling the non-future cards, it's not that bad. Because the deck does play 2 Super Rod to get back Pokemon that you can mill with the Iron Thorns. Not a bad idea. I definitely like Iron Thorns too, because you can do some big, big damage with it. And of course, here we got another future box build. This one a little bit more simple. Again, playing the Iron Leaves and the Iron Valiant and the Miraidon EX. Not playing Iron Hands, just opting for the big attacker here with the Miraidon EX. But it is playing the TM Devo, helping against Charizard a little bit. Really, really trying to beat down on Charizard. You have the TM Devo and the double Iron Leaves in the deck. But it does play the Mew EX, no Radiant Greninja. The next build here we got to look at does, of course, have some interesting stuff in it. We do see the Iron Hands, the Crown, the Leaves, the Iron Valiant. Does play Crisis Punch, which is an interesting TM to play. I guess with the help of the baby Miraidon, your opponent actually can go knock out a 1-prizer, knock out a 2-prizer, knock out a 2-prizer, and then you can clean up with the Crisis Punch. So actually, it's not a terrible idea. You can also do more damage with Crisis Punch too. Don't forget, you can boost Crisis Punch's damage if it's on a Pokemon with 3 energy on it, because you can use Iron Crown to let your Crisis Punch hit even harder, which is actually a really cool interaction that this card does have. There's actually a lot of tools in the deck, to be honest. It's playing TM Devo, it's got Bravery Charm, it's got Future Booster Capsule, it's got the Crisis Punch, the TM Devo and stuff. Really interesting stuff to play. I like the idea of Crisis Punch, because if you're just throwing the 1-prize Miraidon at them and then attacking with mostly 2-prizers for the rest of the match, you can easily use Crisis Punch, which is quite a cool idea. All right, we got another future deck here. This one does have the Iron Treads within the deck. Again, the Iron Tread seems to be like a good attacker because it can turn into 2 really good types. Again, being both a fighting and a metal type is going to be very, very good against Shenpao and against Iron Hands, or Miraidon in general, if Miraidon sticks around. Currently, Miraidon has fallen off a little bit with rotation, but if it does come back at any point, you do have the option to use Iron Treads. But of course, Iron Hands ain't going anywhere. And you're just seeing here attacking heavily with, the Iron Leaves and the Miraidon and the Iron Valiant EX in the deck. Also still playing that Crisis Punch in the deck there, which is kind of cool. We got another Future Box deck here, once again, playing the Iron Hands, the Iron Leaves, and the Iron Valiant. No other big single prize attackers in the deck other than, of course, that 1-prize Miraidon. Then, of course, this one here does play more of the 1-prizers. We got that Iron Hand in the deck once again that can do 160 damage to Vs and EXs, and then you got that 1-prize Iron Valiant that does 130, and then you do have the Iron Treads and the Iron Bundle in the deck. I feel like if you're playing Iron Bundle, it wouldn't hurt to honestly play a Water Energy, right? I know Iron Bundle is a searchable card with Techno Radar, which does give it a bit of synergy, but I wouldn't mind seeing like Water Energy in the deck either. Be kind of cool, because it doesn't have a bad attack, actually. Then, of course, we got another future deck here with the Iron Leaves and the Iron Valiant as the 2 main attackers, but it does play that one of Iron Treads 2 within the deck as the attacker of choice 2 for the 1-prizer. This is an interesting build here. We got a mostly lightning-focused build with Iron Thorns and Iron Hands EX. Now, I kind of like this because you can still play Electric Generator. Electric Generator ain't going anywhere. Now, this build is kind of crazy. It's got Raichu V in the deck, too, alongside all of the other future Pokemon. Obviously, Raichu's not a future Pokemon. It's not going to do much within the deck in terms of your future stuff, but it does give you that big blow-up attacker option if need be. And we can see it does play those 4 generators to build up the Iron Hands EX. If you can turbo get an Iron Hands powered up with Iron Crown and put on that much ampy, very much pressure, that could be kind of crazy. But you can also use the generator to build up your Iron Thorn, which Iron Thorn is in the deck. You can see there's 4 of them in the deck here. And you're trying to do big damage with Iron Thorn. You can use Iron Thorn with the new Mallow supporter to put 2 future cards on top of your deck, too, if you really wanted to. So there is synergy there. Yeah, really cool stuff. Definitely leaning more into the lightning side of things with the generator, but I do like that idea. I mean, I guess maybe you should play more lightning. This build only plays 10 lightning, so maybe playing a little bit more lightning to kind of lean into the more, because 10 energy is not a whole lot. This future box deck is, once again, kind of just a classic build. It's got a lot of Iron Hands in the deck. We got a couple of single-prizer Iron Hands, and then we got the 1 Iron Hands EX, but it's still playing that Pidgeot with the Forest Seal Stone, which I do like. Again, if your whole board is trying to be future Pokemon for Reboot Bot, you can put Pidgeot down, use the Forest Seal Stone, and then just put the Pidgeot back into the deck, and then you can just bench another future Pokemon. So there's some cool synergies, once again, with Pidgeot within the deck. I do think Pidgeot might be the ideal, like, Forest Seal Stone target to play within the future deck. And yeah, the attackers of choice mainly just being the 2 Iron Hands there. And you can kind of see this build here playing Gift Energy. Actually, the other build below it also playing Gift Energy, mainly because Gift Energy is great because, like I said, the future deck doesn't really have a draw engine in the deck. There's no Bibarel or anything, no Pidgeot. EX, nothing like that. It really does rely on the supporters. Now, this build is interesting that we're looking at here. It's an Iron Hands focus build, mainly just playing Iron Hands EX in the deck. It's playing 4 Iron Hands, and it's got the 4 generators, 15 energy. It's kind of like just turbo Iron Hands, basically. It's not even playing Reboot Bot, which is kind of interesting. It's opting for Prime Catcher over Reboot Bot, which is an interesting. But it does play that new Baton Tool card you can see here beside the Future Booster Capsule. When it's attached to a Pokemon with a full retreat cost and it gets knocked out, you can move that energy to another one of your Pokemon on the bench. So you can put this onto Iron Hands EX. Iron Hands gets knocked out, you can move all that energy to another Iron Hands EX. That's kind of the idea there. I guess the idea behind the Prime Catcher is that you're trying to basically just go around your opponent's active and knock stuff out on the bench that Iron Hands can amp for a couple of prizes, which makes sense. Another Future Box deck here with triple Iron Leaves, really leaning in to Iron Leaves. I do like this build too. It also plays a 1/1 Bibarel, which honestly, it doesn't seem like impossible to fit a Bibarel line into the future deck. And even if you have Bibarel in play, I mean, you're still putting, what, 5 energy in play with Reboot Bot. It's really not that bad. Well, this build is playing Prime Catcher, as you can see. It's not playing Reboot Bot. But still, I do like the idea of maybe trying to fit a 1/1 Bibarel into the future box deck. But yeah, this future box deck here does have the Iron Leaves as its main attacker, which again, because Charizard is just a very scary threat right now in Japan. We've got another traditional future box deck here, playing the Radiant Greninja. It's got the Iron Tread, it's got the Iron Hands. I think maybe one of the things to note about the future box decks are all the different attacking options you can play. And maybe that's why future box hasn't really broken through yet and like been as good as it could be compared to Ancient, because there's a ton of ways you can technically build your future box deck. I mean, you can lean into the Iron Hands, you can lean into the Iron Valiant, you can lean into the Miraidon EX, the Iron Leaves, the Iron Treads. Maybe that's what's kind of making it hard, is that we haven't figured out the best attackers yet, or the best, optimal 60 to build when playing the future deck. That honestly could be why the future deck hasn't really been able to do as well as it should be doing, is because there's just so many ways to play. You can see, like, these decks are basically just piles of attackers. Like, I think the Miraidon EX is a very good card, and I think that Iron Leaves is very valuable. Iron Hands is very valuable. I don't know. I think maybe that's what it is. We haven't figured out the optimal attackers and the optimal engines for the attackers. Like, what attackers are optimal to play over anything else? Like, is it worth playing the 1 prize Iron Valiant or the 1 prize Iron Hands? This build also playing that 1 prize Iron Hands EX in the deck and the Iron Treads. It's got the Miraidon there too as main attacker. Then we got another build here playing a couple Iron Valiants, because like you can see there's so many options. Like Iron Valiant seems like it could be good in future box because you can access to Tachyon Bits, which lets you do even more damage. So while you have the damage boost of Iron Crown and Future Booster Capsule, you can also play Iron Valiant in the deck to do even more damage. And that's maybe something too that gets in the way. It's like, well, do you really need to play Iron Valiant when you already have Iron Crown in the deck? Is it better just lean into the 1 prize attackers? Like, you can kind of see that might be why Future Box hasn't taken off yet, because people just haven't figured out the best builds of it yet, and the best ways to play it. And like I said, could be why. This build just kind of plays double Iron Hands. I don't hate it. Not playing any Reboot Bot though, but you can build up Iron Hands, I guess, with like the Miraidon, of course. I guess it's not as bad. This build here, once again, playing that Iron Treads as the 1 prizer alongside the 4 Miraidon. Playing that Crisis Punch 2 in the deck, which again, you can easily lean into if you just use Miraidon and then 2 prizers, and you can kind of clean up with the Crisis Punch. And then, of course, it does have the research. It does play some Judges in the deck, too, for some extra disruption. Judge seems pretty interesting, actually. Another future deck here to look at, getting top 16, playing the Iron Treads, playing the 2 Miraidon EX, not playing any Iron Hands or Iron Valiants, just playing Iron Leaves alongside the Treads and the Miraidons, which I don't mind. I mean, I think the Miraidon EX is just honestly a really good option because it's just a great way to do damage. Like, a lot of the other, future Pokemon, they're doing good damage, but they're not one-shotting stuff a lot of the time. I guess you can kind of make Iron Valiant take one-shots, but I do like the idea of playing the Miraidon EX too, because it's just doing so much damage. I mean, 220 damage with all those mods, you're easily hitting 280 damage, and those are really good numbers to hit. So maybe just kind of leaning more into the Miraidon is like the way to go. All right, this build's interesting. It's playing Iron Moth EX, or the Iron Moth EX. There's no Iron Moth EX. The Iron Moth. Now, the Iron Moth does do 120 damage. It's got the ability where you can move Fire Energy from your bench to it, I'm pretty sure. I did a video on Iron Moth, so I'm pretty sure that's what it does. But it is a fire attacker, so I guess if you want some extra type coverage in the future deck, you do have the Iron Moth in the deck. I don't know if the Iron Moth is worth it. I'm not sure what grass Pokemon you're hitting. I guess Iron Leaves is kind of the way to go, but you already have, like, ways to one-shot Iron Leaves. So I don't know, maybe, I guess that's kind of what it's for. I guess there's any other grass Pokemon that I can think of. Oh, you know what? No, Goldengo. Actually, you know what? That actually might be what the Iron Moth is for. Kind of helps in the prize trade against Goldengo EX, because Goldengo EX is actually pretty good in Japan right now. You can hit for weakness with Iron Moth against Goldengo, and if they don't gust around the Iron Moth, they have to take out a 1 prizer. Okay, that might actually be kind of smart. Yeah, Iron Moth versus Goldengo actually seems kind of good. All right, another future build here. Playing just Iron Hands and Iron Leaves as the two attackers. Does have the Iron Bundle. It is playing a couple water. You can even play Water G with Greninja, where you can like attach a water to Greninja, um, wait another turn, attach again, and then reboot bot Energy Switch to Greninja, and out of nowhere, do a big Moonlight Shuriken. And I guess same thing with Mew. Another future box deck here. This one plays a one of Mimikyu. Interesting inclusion. I'm not sure any matchups where that's going to be helpful, and I guess maybe it's okay against like Charizard. I guess that could be one of the options for the Mimikyu. Another future box here, playing a 1/1 Darkrai. Now, I like that. So, one of the advantages of the future box deck, and this keep in mind, this build actually got top 4. The Darkrai V-Star does allow you to get back your items. So, what you can do is you can actually get back the Reboot Bot, and you can use Reboot Bot twice in a match, and that's really good. Again, Reboot Bot just puts so much energy into play. When you have access to Radiant Greninja and stuff, being able to abuse Reboot Bot is really, really good. So I actually really like the idea of playing a 1/1 Darkrai because you can get back 2 items. You can easily just put back like a switch or something, and then you can get back that Reboot Bot. You can even put Reboot Bot and Energy Switch back to build up a Pokemon in one turn a little bit easier too. So there's a lot of really cool options you get with Darkrai. Darkrai does, of course, eat up a bench spot, so you're putting technical less energy into play with Reboot Bot, but sometimes you don't mind that if you're just trying to build up the one big attacker. So the Darkrai V-Star with Reboot Bot seems kind of sick. I rate that idea. I actually really like that in the future deck. All right, we got another future build with some one prizers. You got that Iron Valiant doing 130, and then you have the Iron Hands that's doing 180 or 160, sorry. But yeah, it does have Iron Valiant 2 in the deck as an attacker and the Miraidon. I like this build too. It's a little bit more simpler, having those one prize attackers when they're needed, but also having access to that big attack with the Miraidon EX seems pretty good. See, I like this 62. I do like that 60. Another build here, just leaning into the Iron Valiant as your main attacker. Just playing Mimikyu again. And again, I'm not sure what the matchup Mimikyu is really used in for, but whatever. But I do like the idea of the Iron Valiant as your main attacker. You can spread a lot of damage on the board with Iron Valiant's ability and Iron Crown's ability. You can do quite a bit of damage with this deck, technically speaking. So yeah, I actually don't hate the idea of playing just like a solely just Iron Valiant EX build of the deck. Because Iron Valiant can do a lot of damage, keep in mind, when you combine its ability and Iron Crown. That's like almost plus 40 damage effectively if you're able to activate Tachyon Bits before you attack, which is kind of sick. Another future box build, playing all the big attackers, the Iron Hands, the Miraidon, EX, the Iron Leaves, and the Iron Valiant in the deck here too. Playing the one of Mew. Mew EX doesn't seem like a bad one of if you're, going to be able to use like energy switching and build it up. And it's also a draw engine because once again, the future deck doesn't really have a great way to get around Iono. I wouldn't mind maybe trying to still squeak in that 1/1 Bibarel. Like that build we looked at earlier was kind of cooking. I really like the idea of playing the Bibarel within the future deck because it seems like it actually isn't a bad one of to play. Another future build here, playing the Leaves, the Valiant, and the Iron Hands, and the Miraidon. I like this build too. I still think it's worth playing Iron Hands in the deck because I mean Iron Hands is just a really good card, right? Like it's I guess like a bit harder to build up, but you can like go Miraidon, attach Reboot Bot to it or something and build it up, or like attach Miraidon to it. Either way, like I think it's still worth playing Iron Hands in the deck regardless. I get this build too. It's kind of splitting the difference between all the big attackers, the Leaves, the Valiant, the Hands, and then the double Miraidon EX. I think Miraidon is just really good because you're just knocking anything out. Like with a couple mods, your KO and Goldengos, Giratina V-Stars, Arceus V-Stars, Lugia V-Stars, stuff like that. It just trades really well into most of the top decks, which is why I like it. EXP share is pretty good too, actually, because all your attackers require a lot of energy, so I don't hate the idea of playing the EXP share in the deck either. This build here, place the Iron Boulder. Oh, no. I forget what that does. No. Okay, we'll skim through that. It's mostly just Iron Boulder attacking deck, it looks like here with the Gutsy Pickaxe and stuff. So I guess we don't really need to count that. But yeah, we got here another future box deck with the Iron Treads and the Iron Hands in the deck as the one prize options and stuff like that. And we got that Crisis Punch in there, and then this next build playing, once again, the Iron Treads. I think Iron Treads is probably worth playing, too. Like, again, there's just so many different attackers you can put in the deck. I think that's one of the issues. There's just too many things you can play in the deck, man. Like, you've got to decide what the optimal ones to play are. Because Iron Treads seems like it could be good. You're hitting relevant weakness against Shempao and Iron Hands, right? So it's got to be good. Another build here, playing the Leaves, the Miraidon EX. It's got that one prize Iron Valiant in the deck, and the Iron Valiant EX in the deck, too. Another build here with the one prize Iron Valiant and the Iron Hands. Those seem to be the other, best one prize options you can play, just because they do so much damage, and you can stack that damage, of course, with the future booster capsules and the Iron Crown. And I guess Iron Valiant, too, if you want to count that. Now, the future box with the Iron Treads. I like this build here, just playing the Iron Hands, the Iron Leaves, and the Iron Treads as your main attackers. There's no Iron Valiant, no Miraidon EX, which I still think you want to play, but you know what? This build opting to just not play the Miraidon EX. We got another Iron Thorns deck here, and it looks like this build does play a lot of future cards. It's got the Turo in the deck. It's got the Mallow supporter. It's got the Miraidons, the Iron Thorns, once again doing a lot of damage. And playing the electric generators as a way to build up the Iron Thorns. So if you're trying to lean more into Iron Thorns as your main attacker, this doesn't seem terrible either, because you can build it up with Miraidon, and you can also power it up with electric generators. So you can attack with it pretty quickly, actually, which is kind of cool. This build here, just playing the Iron Hands, the Valiant, and the Iron Leaves in the deck. No Miraidon EX to be seen. This build is interesting. It's playing Radiant Charizard in the deck. That's something we haven't really seen before in the Future Box deck. I don't hate Charizard. It does give you a nice big one-prize swinging. Honestly, ironically enough, it could be better than playing the other future one-prize attackers. This build also playing the Iron Moth in the deck, like I said earlier. Just being very good against stuff like the Goldengo could be pretty nice to have. So I guess that's kind of the logic behind playing the Iron Moth. You're already playing the Fire Energy in the deck for the Moth. Why not just play a Radiant Charizard in the deck too? I actually don't hate that. You can even build it up even quicker with Energy Switch and Reboot Bot if you really wanted to. And Thornton, you could also use Thornton Reboot Bot to get Charizard into play too. There's some pretty spicy plays you can make with this deck. I kind of like that. And then finally, we got another, the last Future Box deck here to look at on this page. This one, once again, just playing the hands, the leaves. It does have the one of Miraidon EX in the deck, too. This is playing the Baton and the EXP share in the deck. I guess that's like one card to note, is that a lot of the Future Box decks were playing EXP share in them, which I don't hate. I mean, Vacuum will still be out there, but EXP share seems like it's going to be pretty good in the deck, because a lot of your attackers do require 3 energy, and being able to conserve the energy on them seems nice. So maybe playing like the Town Store EXP share build seems to be the way to go, because you also use Town Store with Future Booster Capsule, which also is pretty good. But those are all the Future Box decks right now that are in Japan. Again, the deck I think is still trying to be figured out. I think that's the main thing to note, is that there's so many different Pokemon you could play in the deck, so many different attackers you can run, that I think people are just trying to figure out the best attacker line for the deck. And I think once we kind of figure things out with the Future Box deck, we find out what the optimal lists are, what the optimal attackers to play are, I think we're going to see Future Box rise in popularity, because I think it's all there. I mean, it's got heavy hitters with Miraidon EX, it's got Iron Leaves for some type coverage, it's got a lot of damage potential with Iron Valley and Iron Crown, it's got a lot of really good one-prize options, and it, of course, has that big Iron Hands EX in the deck, which can be very annoying. So there's a lot of options the deck has. I think we just have to figure out the best way to build it and best attackers to put within the deck. That's going to be the way to go with the Future Box deck. But yeah, next up, I'll probably look at some Ancient decks in Japan, because Future, of course, looking pretty good, but Ancient, I think, is doing a lot better right now, because Ancient's a little bit more straightforward than Future is. But I'm excited to look at that when we get there. Hope you all enjoyed the video here on the second channel on all of the Future Box decks. If you did, leave a like in the video. If you're new to the channel, once again, subscribe down below and all that good stuff. And I'll catch you on another video. Have a good rest of your day, and bye-bye.